Ba-da-ba-ba, ba-da-ba-ba. All right. Promoter 101. 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 Get out of the Promoter 101.
This is Arielle Hyatt from Cyber PR on the Promoter 101 podcast.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's all over. It's over.
Nothing is over, Connor. It's only just beginning. This is episode 75 of the Promoter 101 podcast. I'm Luke Pierce, hanging with the one that sells tickets, motherfucker. We call him the Jew, Mr. Dan Steinberg.
Thanks, Mr. W. Luke Pierce. This week we got the goods. ITB's Lucy Dickins talks about Mumford Sons and Adele with us.
And we've got Live Nation Canada's Harvey Cohen opening up about being one of Canada's largest independents to his current gig at Live Nation.
We're going to talk to him about selling out, motherfucker. That's going to be great. And then AEG's Toby Leighton-Pope recounts a royal war story.
And this week we've got a very special news of the week with our buddy from Billboard and Amplify magazine, Mr. Dave Brooks.
Hey, what's going on? This is Bubbles.
This is Julian. And this is Ricky.
You're listening to Promoter 101.
We're finishing up our world tour. Catch us live for a live taping of Promoter 101.
Tuesday, July 24th, IAVM's Venue Connect 2018, the Promoter Agent Panel, star-studded lineup with CAA's Brian Hill, APA's Ralph James, Emporium's Jason Zink, Frank Productions' Charlie Goldstone, and Live Nation Canada's Riley O'Connor. And I'll be doing the moderating. That's coming to Toronto, Canada. Get your tickets now.
In the meantime, keep up with us on Twitter. I'm at W. Luke Pierce. This show is at Promoters 101, and Dan is at The Jew.
Feel free to send us an email anytime you want to tell us how badly we fucked this shit up. It's Steiny at promoter101.net. You can reach either of us there. We will probably reply to you.
Lucy Lawler-Freese, Rival Entertainment and the Fox Theater in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm on Promoter 101.
If you've missed any of our past podcasts, you can always catch up at promoter101.net. This week, we feature a classic reissue of episode 33.
That's got some amazing interviews, including the Tacoma Dome's Ken Badir.
New Frontier Touring's Paul Lohr and Trip Brown talk about teaming up.
And Lithuania's music mogul Renatas Nekujas gives us a taste of booking in Eastern Europe.
Man, his beard really got long this year. He's kind of letting it go, being a little more relaxed. It was good seeing him at ILMC. Plus, we've got Psycho Steve Presents playing 3 questions with me and Bill Kittle from Tour Design. That was a great fun time.
And don't you think it's actually time that you subscribe to this podcast? Promoter 101 is a free service we provide to you, so take 2 seconds. Subscribe to Promoter 101 wherever you podcast.
It's John Finberg from First Row Talent, and I'm on Promoter 101. News of the week.
It's time for the news of the week.
ICM and Howie Mandel have teamed up to buy Just for Laughs. This is an interesting movement, just like William Morris getting into the festival space and buying things like UFC. ICM now in the inquiring mode, and they're buying the biggest comedy festival in the world. And obviously, Just for Laughs is more than just a comedy festival. They're TV shows. They're a whole circuit of promotion. This is a big deal, and it's a real game changer for ICM, don't you think, Luke?
I don't think it's anything new for the agency world to be a content or a media business. And as far as festival and live events, ICM has kind of been sneakily behind WMCA and their efforts to buy up sites or rights to sites that host festivals. And it's no surprise here that with such a strong presence in comedy, led by Steve Levine, who's got acts like Hollywood Dell, Chris Rock, and Jay Leno, the history here totally makes sense. They've already named Silverman. It's not Robert. That's the ICM managing director and partner. Chris Silverman will be the chairman of the board for Just for Laughs. So none of this surprises me at all. It seems like a good home and a natural transition. There's a lot of generational shift that's happening in comedy right now, Just for Laughs being in its 36th year. And so I would imagine the leadership of Just for Laughs is at that age where they need to find a succession plan. And I think this is great for the growth and expansion of a really great event in Montreal.
Well, and let's also keep in mind Howie Mandel is from Canada. He's done amazing things with his career since he's got this rediscovery on America's Got Talent. Not that he ever went away per se, but clearly with that weekly TV show, he's greater access to the next generation of fans, and he's never been bigger.
Absolutely. Looking forward to seeing what the next steps for this are. This agencies have to change their business model. They have to become more of a content provider out there to compete at the highest level, and that's what ICM is doing with moves like this.
Let's move on to rumor becoming fact this week. Lenore Kinder has left AEG, Nashville, Messina Group to become an agent at Paradigm. This is a huge jump for someone that was just killing it in the touring space and as a promoter at that company last year. For her to leave that space and change complete careers is a massive risk and jump.
Yeah, I'm quite frankly surprised by Lenore's move from AEG to Paradigm, especially given how successful of a run she's had in the past couple of years. I mean, this is someone who's looking after Casey Musgraves nationwide. She's looked after the Lumineers nationwide, 2 incredible tours. And it's, of course, rumored here that she'll be taking Casey with her to book for the U.S. while at Paradigm. But an ACM Promoter of the Year winner, this is a rising star at Polestar. I don't think Lenore's stock has ever been higher, so if she did want to make a move, now is a great time for it. And I hope this move works out for her. Phenomenal promoter, and I'm excited to see what she does as an agent.
Great move by Paradigm to lock her up. She is a player. This is a good moment for her. I think she's going to be successful in anything she does. It's just when you're on top of your game, who switches industries? It's a very odd move, but she clearly has a game plan, and I have faith that she knows what she's doing.
Absolutely. Now that Dan and I's little bits aside here, we are going to welcome to Promoter 101 episode 75 our good friend from Billboard Magazine and Amplify Magazine, Dave Brooks. Welcome to Promoter 101.
Welcome to the show, dude.
Hey, thanks for having me, Steiny.
So what's going on out there in telephone entertainment land?
We had a report today at Billboard of a pretty seismic management shift. Scooter Braun is now managing Zac Brown Band. Zac Brown Band had been with Roar for like ever, and now they're switching management and going with Scooter. It's his first major country client.
You got to think of this as a pop act once you get to that big, and it's apples to apples when you're talking about Justin Bieber's Zac Brown, because it's just mainstream at the biggest possible level.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, though, that he decided to switch management at this time. He's got a really busy slate for the year with touring. He's playing a bunch of stadium shows, Citi Field, Petco Park. So it'll be interesting as more comes out about the switch. We can't even get either side to talk about it, but we feel pretty good in our confirmation and, moving forward.
What else is going on in the rock and roll world out there, Dave?
We've talked about the venue wars pretty continuously for the last year. Ozzy Osbourne actually filed a lawsuit against AEG, arguing that its policy of requiring artists that want to play the O2 Arena in London to also play the Staples Center is anti-competitive and violates anti-monopoly laws.
So somebody's finally calling bullshit on a real level.
Yeah, it's interesting because this is a class action lawsuit. So hypothetically, other artists who have been served this letter called the Staples Center Commitment Letter, which basically stipulates that if you're going to play the O2 and you're touring in LA, you've also got to play the Staples Center. This kind of brings a chance to bring other artists into the fold. It's been a fight, for a long time, but you're right. This is really the first artist that stepped forward and said this policy is anti-artist.
In Emporium, we are pro-artist, and particularly at Promoter 101. We're about the artists. We put them first. This is bullshit, Dave. But we're all excited to just continue to watch this back and forth between the Oakview Group and AEG play out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything else out there happening, Dave?
So there's 2 really cool futuristic venues that I'm watching right now. One's in London. Earlier this year, James Dolan announced that he's going to build the Sphere in Las Vegas. Now we're going to have a second one in London. The pictures of this thing make it look like an exploding marble on fire. It's got crazy LEDs all over it. It's got this sound system that apparently projects music directly to you. Got 3D, VR, all this crazy technology. Supposedly, this is the future of arena entertainment. He's building one in Vegas. He's going to be building another one in London. And I'm just dying to learn more about this project, which is projected with $1 billion price tag.
These things are popping up like gremlins. Somebody must be feeding them after midnight, Dave. It's just first it's Vegas. Now we're looking at London. Is there enough content on the road to supply all of these venues?
At this point, I don't know the answer to that. Maybe. But I keep going back to the whole idea that whatever MSG is working on in Vegas, it's not your typical concert hall, right? It's going to have all this crazy visual and sound technology. It sounds like they're going to create content that can only play these Sphere venues.
Well, if you're going to create something that is all-inclusive of it can only play our kind of rooms, you limit yourself to the amount of content that will be available in that scenario. Is everybody going to double down and do this? Who's going to be able to afford to perform at this level? Some people will, but only the top of the top. I'm guessing when it comes to the arena business in Vegas and London, that's what Dolan is looking for.
Yeah, and these projects have a long ways to go, even being permitted. We're just at the beginning. We're just at the rendering and storytelling stage. We're not even having shovels in the grounds.
And they got a great graphic designer because that shit looks cool as hell.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely pushing technology.
Hey, I want to thank you so much. It's always great to have you on Promoter 101, cutting edge, getting the dirt, the scoops that no one else is getting, and breaking the details on some of the hottest stories in the industry. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Sonny, thanks for having me.
That'll do it for the news of the week. Thanks to Dave Brooks for joining us. Once again, it's always great to have great contributors like him on the show. Thanks, Dave.
Hey, boo-boo buddy, let's get some picnic baskets and listen to Promoter 101.
And finally, we want to take a moment to shine a spotlight on C3 Concerts Charlie Walker as our badass of the week. He's one of the most respected players in the game, and he's got a mind on the next level, pretty much just killing it, making him a badass all the way around, and our Promoter 101 badass of the week. Congrats goes out to you, Mr. Walker.
This is Jamie Adler, and I'm here with Steiny. We're doing Promoter 101.
In our feature interview this week, we have a special interview with ITB's Lucy Dickins talking about Mumford Sons and Adele.
We are at the ILMC, and I'm joined by Lucy Dickins. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much.
You're a booking agent at ITB.
I am.
And you guys are having an amazing moment right now, like exploding acts all over your roster.
Yeah, it's been pretty exciting the last few years, I would say, definitely.
You are second generation industry.
I am.
Did you know right away through your father, Barry, that you wanted to be in the business, or did it catch on later?
No, I think he was hoping I didn't go into it, and I don't think I wanted to go into it. I was kind of surrounded by so many people in the music industry that it never really entered my mind that that was a path that I would have taken. I actually sort of studied film, and I actually wanted to do what I do now, but on the film side. So I wanted to go into like distribution, selling films. And that was the path I thought I'd take. And it was only purely because I finished at college and I had like 2 days off. And my dad was like, if you think you're going to sit around here and I'm going to pay for you, you've got another thing coming, you can come and do some work for me while you're waiting for interviews. And that's what I did. Then I think I just sort of got the taste for it. And I realised, because I was always into music, but I was just brought up around it from such an early age. And there was always music conversations going on around our house, like, with my grandfather and my uncle and my brother and my dad. So it was like there was constant music. There was always music on in our house. I always loved music. I just never thought I'd take that path, though.
So you grew up backstage at shows and had access to everything, everywhere. Your dad knew everyone, and you guys were involved with the biggest level acts. Your dad was a promoter as well as an agent. So it was all there for you.
Yeah, it was really strange, actually. Funny enough, I had James Blake supporting Kendrick Lamar the other day, and one of the shows was at Wembley, and I honestly did not know the front way into Wembley Arena, which is so sad. Wembley was the venue then. It was like the O2, that was where all of Dad's shows were. When I was really young, I was always driven straight into the back of the building and then taken in that way around to see shows. And I remember taking friends of mine, teenage years, and friends of mine would, like, their jaws would hit the floor. But it was just a normal life. And Dad's really humble. He's not one of those guys that sort of really bangs on about what he does. He keeps himself to himself. He's a very humble man, and he never made a deal out of it. So we didn't see it as anything other than the norm, really.
So you're there, and then suddenly you're done with university, thinking that film is going to be your world.
Mm-hmm.
You're working at the office.
Working at the office, I had the shittiest job possible, literally writing envelopes out to post contracts in and stuff like that.
You were doing the grunt work.
Oh, like the pits. And I think it was my dad just trying to prove a point. He was always like that with us as kids. It was like, you have to work for everything you've got. He was really tough. And I think that's why we were such high achievers in that way, because it was like whatever we did was never really good enough for my dad. He was always on us. And so I think he always I went into his office. He didn't want me to be his daughter going in and having it easy. So he gave me all this real crap jobs to do. And then one day I thought I sort of had a bit of a meltdown, threw my toys out the pram and said, I'm really bright. Why am I sitting here writing envelopes out? I'd worked for David Levy for a bit as well, which was great. I have to say, he taught me a lot, because I went his assistant at the time. She was off sick, I think. So I was covering for her. And then eventually she left, and then I became David's assistant. So I learned quite a bit with David Levy, who I was with last night, actually. And we still sort of go back to remembering those days when I was like so young, like being his assistant. And then I remember doing these other sort of jobs. And then eventually I think it all happened when my dad sort of said, well, if you think you're that great, here's a map, go and route a tour. And I thought, right, fuck you, I will. I'm going to go and do this. And I, just because I was like, right, I'm going to prove to you I'm actually what I'm saying I am. So I sort of routed this tour. And to be honest with you, routing tours is not my best thing. Like, I'm shit at geography. Like, how I got into this job, I don't know. It's just the music side that I like. I kind of didn't mind it at first, but I think when you've done so many, it becomes like a bit generic, doesn't it? It's a bit like, oh, here we go, it's another.
Well, at some point you start knowing how many miles and how many hours and what the overdrive is.
That's when it becomes written, when you know you need double drivers and if your freight can get across and da-da-da. So it was, anyway, I had to do this tour thing, but obviously I didn't have any of that knowledge at that time. But actually what I did do, apparently, he said was not that bad. That for me was quite interesting because it was a challenge. I'd not done it. So I'm one of those people that if I've been given something, I won't give up at it until I can do it. So I kind of did that, routed the tour. And then from then onwards, I started doing more and more and routing tours for him.
So who were the first couple bands that you were actually starting to book?
Well, this is what's so hilarious. So there was an Orson Welles once said that he started at the top and worked his way down. And that's what I say, because I literally started off on like Alanis Morissette and Savage Garden, who were huge. I mean, I remember like going to like Stockholm Globe Arena for Savage Garden, and I'd actually worked on it. My first ever disc was Savage Garden, who were huge at the time.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And then started doing more and more day-to-day stuff for him. And then eventually it was time for me to start taking on my own artists.
Who was the first act you signed?
My first real proper signing is Hot Chip.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I signed a couple of real baby bands before that who aren't together now, you know, but that I can't remember even what their names are. I was trying to remember it the other day. But they were not really like, we didn't really do much. It was like a couple of gigs that we booked. But I always think my first proper signing, as in like I went to meet a band, went and had a meeting, discussed their touring plans, how we were going to make this work, was definitely Hot Chip. They were like a middle act. Do you remember that band Towers of London?
Yeah.
Right, so Hot Chip was supporting Towers of London at Borderline, and every single promoter was down there for Towers of London. And Hot Chip played, they were on just before. I can't remember who was on first now, actually. But I know everyone was dancing Towers of London, but everyone was sort of going on about the Towers of London and saying how great they were. And I thought they were awful, but everyone thought they were fantastic. And it was that whole sort of industry, you know, someone's found something, let's all follow suit. Everyone thinks this band's going to be massive. And I was down there for Hot Chip, obviously. And afterwards, loads of promoters said to me, yeah, you know, bit bedroom band, don't we know? Yeah, it's all right, not bit bedroom band. Those promoters were like knocking on the door when they were like selling that 2 nights at Brixton Academy. Do you know what I mean? Like a couple of years later. No, they were doing their first show, the Astoria, like we got them going quite quickly.
And you remembered every one of them that told you they were a bedroom band.
Yeah, I do. I still bring it up and I can still name them. And I still sometimes, when I've had a few drinks, go, do you remember that time you told me that they were a bedroom band? Actually, one of them is actually their promoter now as well.
They've moved into a much bigger bedroom.
Yeah, much bigger. Palatial suite.
Is there a process that you get into as far as how that pitch works when you meet a band and you want to take them on as a client?
No, I can't really do that whole sort of pitch because it really is from my gut. Like I can't work something I don't generally love. So everything I've signed, I'm like their biggest fan.
Lightning has certainly struck many times on your roster.
Yeah, it's been good. I mean, I did someone say to me, I think I was just lucky in there at a time, and someone went, you can't be lucky that many times. And I was like, well, maybe. But I don't know. I mean, there was a lot of good music around at that certain time, and I feel like I probably got quite a lot of them. And they were kind of interlinked in a lot of ways as well. So, you know, there's someone knew someone who knew someone. You know, the Adele signing was because she came with Jack Peñate, who was one of my artists, to a Hot Chip show. That's how I met her. So there was kind of...
Your dad brought that up last year. The creative part of the Adele signing was that your brother had nothing to do with you getting the act, that it was separate conversations with the artist and neither one of you knew that the other one was working on that.
He had said to her, okay, we need to get you an agent. She said, I know exactly who I want my agent to be. This is this girl I've met called Lucy. And Jonathan went, fuck off, that's my sister. But when we'd met at separate ways. I met her through Jack Peñate through a Hot Chip gig, and Jonathan was managing Jack, but no one had actually said to Adele, that's Jonathan's sister. No one had said anything. I was Hot Chip's agent. And she and I totally clicked. And it was because of the way her personality was that I went home to listen to that CD. She was totally someone I wanted to hang out with. She was just so funny. And she actually, the best thing ever, and I was telling this story the other day because it's funny how things come back, was that she actually said, I said, you're a singer, aren't you? Because Jack had said to me, she's got the most amazing voice. She went, yeah. She went, do you want one of my CDs? I went, yeah. And she looked to get one. She went, oh, shit. She goes, I've given them all away. She walked over to this bloke. She tapped him. She went, excuse me. She went, can I have that CD back, please, that I gave you because I need to give it to her? And that's what she did. She took the CD off this person and gave it back to me. And no word of a lie. I've still got the CD. No word of a lie. That's exactly what she did. And it was only because I went home.
That CD's going to have to go to the Hall of Fame at some point.
Yeah. And it was like pure just recordings, like rough recordings. And it was insane. Like I was mopping my floor in my living room or hoovering or something. And I was like, oh my God, this is like the most amazing voice I've ever heard.
She gives you the CD that night. You meet her. You're fascinated. You actually play the CD, which not always happens.
I played the CD and I called my brother and told him. I said, have you heard? He said, yeah, I've had a meeting with her. She's amazing. And then we didn't have another conversation about it. That was it. He just started having meetings with her. But he didn't know that she'd come to my gig, that she'd give me the CD, that I'd heard the CD until, I rang him like time a bit later on and went, oh my God, I've just listened to this CD of that girl.
So does that give you an amazing shorthand? You guys clearly know each other better than most managers and agents would know each other.
Yeah, I mean, we are so similar in a lot of ways. Very in tune. Working with him is the hardest thing in the world because he's really, really tough to work for. He's hard, but because I know the way he sort of thinks, I know that I always have to be that one step ahead. I know what he's going to ask me for, but he'll always catch me out. The guy, he's like an artist, and so he's so smart. He's super smart. He's like such an amazing manager and so smart. I learned loads from him. You have to keep on your toes the whole time. And even when you think you're on your toes, he'll throw your question at you and you won't know the answer to it. And I'm like, damn.
Truly an industry family. And there's a lot of that over here. It's like, obviously, the Leighton-Popes have that going on where they're taking over the industry in every different part. And it seems like it's much bigger in this country than it is in the States.
Yeah, it definitely has hit here a bit, hasn't it? I can't say that I want my kids to go into it, though. Don't know.
Mumford Sons is your act.
Yes.
They seem to have found the perfect moment at the perfect time. And I don't think there's too many acts that have released albums in the last 20 years where it's not about the single. It's about the album. Every song on that album is amazing.
They've got everything. They've got an amazing songs, an amazing life. They're also incredibly, like literally probably one of my favourite people in the world to work with. They're amazing.
Well, their creativity is interesting because not only do you see it on stage, it's extended outside of that. Their Gentlemen of the Road tour is one of the most fascinating concepts I've ever seen.
Well, that was again because of their love of touring. So, they were touring a lot in America at the time and there were lots of festivals that they really liked the way that they were. And they were like, well, hang on a second, why don't we do this? We love being on the road. Why don't we bring people that we like with us on the road and take all the bits of these festivals that we've travelled around and seen into our festival? So we have good food and local beers and, and everything's all made local and friendly. And it's just one big happy family on the road. And they love it. They love touring and they've got their friends on the road with them. And it's the Gentlemen of the Road thing. I'm really excited we're going to be looking at more of those again.
I got to see them open for U2 this year in Seattle.
Oh, they were great.
Interesting moment because you could see them having fun with that.
And that show was amazing. I saw them on here just because I wanted to see it. I wanted to see the stage design. I love Ez Devlin, who designs all of their stages and stuff. So beautiful. And so I always want to go and see other shows. I've spent actually last week I was at Bon Iver, which I was literally loved, one of my favourite shows. I actually really enjoy going to other shows that are not, because otherwise you just end up doing your own shows all the time. So I purposely wanted to go and see the U2 show, but I didn't see Mumford's opening for them.
Is there a lot of cross-connection when you talk to the American counterpart agents, when you're figuring out the routing and the timing of the album cycles?
You kind of do, but they give you a period and then you have a period. Adam and I speak more as a Voith. I'll call him Voith because the manager's called Adam as well. So Voith and Adam, who's the manager, we'll often all get on a call together and we'll all try and plan out. So we've had a few calls recently where we're trying to plan out Mumford stuff. And then I'll deal with Kirk.
Summers.
Yeah, when I was doing stuff with Adele, we'd obviously try and have a few conversations about how things were going to happen. And obviously, when your shows have gone ahead of their shows, they want to know how it's all going, how it's rolling, and that, So yeah, but I wouldn't say it's like a tight relationship that you're constantly on the phone with them.
So Adele did something that was interesting on the last go around, at least in the States, where she went out of her way to work with independent promoters.
We did that here too.
I assume that started from the artist up.
It was a bit of all of us, I think. I think we all kind of wanted to do what was right for her. It's very easy just to go and just do one big Live Nation tour, which is what everyone does, and to take the money. And I don't know, I think we all felt, and she felt as well, that having those individual people that have been there, she's a very loyal person, Adele.
And a lot of those people were the original promoters.
There were a lot of them were original promoters. So they've left and they've been part of Live Nation, and then now they've gone out on their own. And it was like, well, they were there from the beginning. So there was a lot of loyalty. She's an exceptionally loyal person. It was fairly put out. When we pitched it, we fairly put it out to everybody. And we didn't, we used a lot of promoters from Live Nation in Europe, and then we used some independents as well. So we kind of mixed it up. We went with people that we felt was the right pitch, who got her, who was basically going to do the right by her and for those shows. It wasn't like we're not going to go with anyone, we're just going to use independent. It was like we're going to use who we think is right for this.
So it was a case-by-case scenario.
Definitely case by case.
So her personality, is that why she's a star? Her ability to put herself in a road case, to be hidden and rolled around to the back of the house so the fans don't see her? I mean, her voice is the voice. There's no question.
Phenomenal voice. But she's always had this ability, Adele, that because she would talk to the post boy the same way she would talk to the chairman of the record company. She's just had that incredible ability just to make everyone feel like everyone's equal, and she's on your level, and everyone relates to her. And I think, when she sings and the lyrics are just, everyone can relate to that girl. And she's just pretty straightforward, normal young girl.
When you go from booking clubs to booking theaters to booking arenas, then stadiums, festivals, and in the case of Gentlemen of the Road, finding and developing a complete site, when you're putting those deals together, that's got to require a lot of different skill sets and a lot of different hats.
Yeah, I mean, you learn, and also I promote Adele and Mumford Sons so I'm not just their agent. I also promote them in London and Mumford's in some other areas as well.
In the case of Mumford or even Adele, when you're the agent and the promoter, is the manager more involved with that deal? Because you can't really buy against yourself. It's kind of hard.
You have to be really fair. And the thing is I remember, and fun enough, with John Dalton and Alex McLeod, who are both, Alex is Mumford's tour account and John is Adele's. And I remember having rounds with other promoters about certain things about the show. And then when it came to settle on my show, I had to say to them, I have to do this to myself because I can't be beating people up and not do the same. So I'm pretty fair.
You kind of want to live by example too. It's settlement, right?
Yeah, and you also, it's about being transparent. There's no transparency in anything anymore. There's just lies and people trying to earn money out of you left, right and centre. And I learned a lot of things when you settle shows and stuff on that level. There was so many things that you can probably question. And I think when it's your show, you kind of know, and your managers trust you, and you are being transparent. Like everything that's coming in, this is the original bill. This is how much it costs. And okay, we can make a deal on this. So it's, in a way, I think it works really well. And you obviously then take off your agent hat.
Well, it's got to be one of those nights where you're probably more social than you are in any other given scenario. You've got a stadium show with your artist who you're representing. More media probably covering that show than many, because London's one of the biggest markets in the world. Friends and family coming to see that show. And you're overseeing the show itself, too. So that had to be a very busy night for you.
The whole Wembley thing was quite exhausting. I mean, there was one point where they were calling me down, they were radioing me and telling me I needed to come onto the pitch because they'd seen some footage about Adele with Grenfell Tower and they weren't sure if it would be allowed to go out there because Wembley thought that she was dissing how much their drinks were. And then it was just like real small, like petty little things. So you'll just be doing something and then you get another raid, can you come here? And in the end, you end up being sort of quite cutthroat about it and being quite harsh.
Just because you got to get back to the next thing,
I've just got to get things done. And I mean, and then obviously the last two shows got cancelled, which was like, it was like the worst day of my life in the fact that Wembley decided to very helpfully put, rather than to contact your ticket purchasers, they decided to put contact ITB. And we are 26 people office and we had suddenly 90,000, so 180,000 people asking us what was happening with our ticket on our email system. Really, and they didn't take it down despite me asking for quite some time. So we then had to sort of go through all these people that were devastated, people that had flown from all over the world to come in to see. I mean, it was just atrocious. On top of that, I had an artist in floods of tears because she couldn't make the last two shows and she was devastated, and we couldn't reschedule the shows because we couldn't get availability. And then there was no other stadium that was big enough. So I had her in tears, the venue screwing about insurance and going off on one about that, 180,000 people asking where their tickets were, and the following day it was my birthday, and I spent the whole day just on the phone going, sorry, hang on 1 minute, sorry everyone, sorry, hang on 1 minute, I've just got to go outside and take this call. It was horrendous. That was when I didn't like being a promoter.
Being a promoter is something that I've grown up doing, and I can live through the cancellations and everything else. I just can't imagine balancing multiple things, and it's not acceptable in America. It's one thing I've always found very fascinating about the European model is anything you want to take on, you can take it on.
All the American Adele crew all kept saying to me, you're not allowed to do this in America, you're not allowed to be an agent and a promoter. You say it to me all the time. And they were like, it's so weird that you all do that here.
And it's certainly a thing. I mean, your father's promoted stadium shows for years.
Well, I think that's why I did it. And especially now, there's so many bands out there. And for me, it's like that beginning bit. I love that beginning bit. I've loved that challenge of like that there were yeah, I love it. That's my drive, because I love that bit so much. And then I'd have to say to a promoter, "Oh, what about this venue? Or maybe we should look at this, or maybe we should do it like this." I suddenly thought, well, why am I doing that when I could do that myself? You know, and then I can control it. And so it kind of started. The interest in it started with me with Jamie T, although I wasn't his promoter. We used to put a night on called Panic Prevention Disco, 12 Bar on Denmark Street. So it's like 90 cap. We used to sell tickets in advance, but I think I used to do something like 30 or 50 tickets, literally in advance. And then everyone had to queue up. And I used to do the door. I used to sit and do the door. It started from that, I think. I was like, this is so fun. And also you get to meet their real fans and talk to them. And so it was from that point, and that was even like with James Blake. We played a little church when I first took him on, this sound system, and I thought the roof was going to fall off. But again, me and James, who works with me, I pulled a little table up, sat there, people came in. I was pregnant at the time as well, and I was doing the door, crossing names off, and I was like, this is really fun.
So you talked about the creative process that you really enjoy. That are there new acts that you're trying to break right now?
There are. So I've got Lily Moore, who is Gary Moore's daughter. She's incredible talent. My last sort of signing that I was trying to break was Mabel, and it's now already like she's selling out forums like way in advance of her show. So I need to start signing a few more good ones. But to be honest, I won't sign anything unless I really like it.
Well, you've got an amazing knack for picking really good live bands.
Yeah. Well, that's probably because that's what I grew up with, I guess. That's what I was going to live shows since I was 3.
So you book the entire world besides North America?
Yeah.
That's just a massive amount of a map to have to figure out where you're playing where with what, and knowing all of the international buyers.
Try that when you've just given, like my daughter was 10 days old and I was told that the Adele World Tour was about to happen. Never taken maternity leave. Well, my daughter's 3 next week and my son is 5. When I got the call, I remember my brother going, I'm in a bit of a difficult situation, because you're my sister and I love you, but, it's my artist and I need a tour. I was like, don't worry about it. I'll do it.
It's a fascinating concept, knowing every buyer in every part of the world. I get the U.S. is broken out and Canada's broken out, but still, that's just a massive amount of a Rolodex that you have to have your hands on.
It is a huge amount of people to speak to. I mean, there are, everyone in Europe, especially if you go independent, you start doing, I haven't got anyone that's done it. I've never sold a tour yet. I'm not saying I never would, but I have never, to date, I've never sold a tour. So it is a lot of all those people you've got to speak to independently every single time.
On top of that, you're booking the whole world and you cut out the biggest market in the world. I know it's traditionally always been that, but now that Paradigm is buying Coda and X-Ray, and now that William Morris is here and CAA is here and bridges are starting to gap where the American agencies are now here, is the idea of booking the rest of the world and not leaving that piece off the table appeal to you?
It's kind of appealed to me, but I don't know it. It's huge, isn't it? It's a massive, massive market. It appeals to me, but it terrifies me because it's something I just don't know. Although I then sort of sit there thinking now when you've got the American agents booking into Europe.
When you think about the guys that set up this business in this market, your father being one of them, they're such entrepreneurs, him, and obviously Neil did it. Neil set up in both markets. But the idea of playing that way and leaving that huge piece of the map off the table when you're doing everything else, it's got to be tempting.
It's definitely tempting, but it's just a whole new, I'd need to move there and move around with it. I like to know all the venues. That's what's great for me here. Like, I know the venues. I know what I'm putting them into.
Before I let you go, can I get some advice for the young agents coming up in the business? What would you recommend they do?
Do you know what? It's funny because I think it's really hard now for like the young agents coming up because there are just so many bands out there. But I honestly just think you've just got to, for me, my best bit of advice always to myself has always been to listen to your gut. And if there's something you really, really like and you're passionate about it, just stick with it. Just keep going with it.
Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
Anyone that has ever had the pleasure of spending time with Lucy will tell you she is just a class act and thrilled for all her success. Great to have her on the podcast.
Becca Leifer, operations manager at Forest Hills. I'm on Promoter 101.
Tweets of the week.
It's the name of the show, so let's talk about it. Some Promoter 101 tweets of the week. Let's see what was going on in Dan's sick and twisted mind this past week. Let's start here. Dear all third-party ticketing services, if you're nice to the venue box office staff, they are much more likely to help you.
Duh.
It's amazing how bands can't count to 30 when turning in a guest list, but when it's time to settle the show, they all of a sudden become CPAs.
It's so true, isn't it, Luke?
I don't know what you're talking about, Dan.
Yeah, I bet.
Dear record labels, not responding about your ticket holds for weeks and then dumping them all on the day of the show is not cool.
I can't remember the last time I actually heard of someone doing a ticket buy for a show. Actually, the term tour support, I don't even think people remember that. But seriously, you're only damaging your act by dumping tickets at the last second and putting them out there. It's like you're leaving great seats on reserved seat shows open, and you're flooding the market and usually giving away bands revenue by not getting back to us quicker about that so we can fill those with fans that want to see the show. Help your bands out. Help us help you.
That'll do it for Promoter 101 Tweets of the Week. Make sure you give Dan a follow on Twitter. He is at The Jew.
Hello there, Andy Summers from APA and Promoter 101. Happy to be here.
Next, we're joined by AEG UK's Toby Leighton-Pope, recounting a royal war story. You may ask, why is it a royal war story? Well, listen, and you're about to find out.
Toby Leighton-Pope, welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Thanks, Dan. I really appreciate it. It's good to be back.
What do you got for us?
We're sat here at the Royal Garden Hotel in London overlooking Hyde Park, and I can't stop thinking about one of my biggest gigs here. Back in 2012, we did Bruce Springsteen, did 80,000 tickets sold out. Probably the biggest show I've ever done, actually. And that capacity is now gone. You can't sell 80,000 in Hyde Park anymore. They won't let you. So it was a one-off, a moment. Sold out day, having a great time, watching Springsteen just do his thing. It was amazing. Just a great night. And I've got my friends there, family, and we're hanging out and we're watching the gig, and there's a sort of setback behind the mixer. There was a little VIP area. My gang are there, are hanging out and thinking, wow, this is really cool. But Hyde Park has the strictest curfew. There is no going late. And Bruce had played here before, I think back in 2008, maybe 10, and he was totally cool. They get it. You know, they know it's a royal park. It's owned by the Queen, the local stakeholders here. It's not like hiring a stadium. It's the royal park. You know, it's tricky.
It's literally owned by the Queen.
Yeah, it's her park. It's her house out there. She's great, and we love them, and we have a great time doing it. You just have to be very respectful of it's their lawn. There's curfews and curfews. It's strict here. Also, Park Lane is one of the most wealthiest areas in London, and some big hotels, and they don't want loud music playing, which I get as well.
Do you settle with the Queen when you're doing the property deal?
I wish. No, they're her people. It's actually a charity who goes with the money, so they're amazing people to work with. So with the gig's going well, I'm sat there with my friends, we're having a great time. Springsteen's just killing it, as he always does, and I'm a huge fan. And he's played the festival before, he gets it. You know, there was a 20-band bill, 3 stages. It was cool, really cool. Come to about 9:45. So we had 45 minutes, 10:30 strict curfew, 45 minutes to end the show, and Bruce is now into it. He's really into his speed, you know, it's brilliant. So I say to my friends, my brother, my girlfriend, everybody there, I'm going to go backstage and just make sure, you know, everything's cool. So I sort of fight my way through the crowd, 80,000 people, no gold circle, just 80,000, come as you are, let's go, you know. So I get backstage, John Landau's there and George Travis is there. I'm like, this is great. They're like, yeah, it was a great night, loving it. He's having a really good time. This is cool. I'm like, fantastic. There's no real set list with Bruce. He kind of starts and then he just goes off on a tangent, but he kind of finishes the same format sometimes. But it does change, as you know, if you're a fan. He has some kind of rhythms that he gets into. I think certain songs follow other songs. And so we're peaking right now. It's like, it's really happening. It's 5 to 10. I've got 35 minutes and he's probably got 4 songs left, maybe, you know. So I'm thinking 35 minutes, 4 songs, we're looking at fine, we're good, you know, it's okay. And so I stood on the side of the stage and I'm going, this is really cool, you know, Bruce Springsteen, I'm blown away, you know, biggest show ever. And I looked to my left and Paul McCartney stood next to me. I'm like, fucking hell, Paul McCartney's here. I didn't know he was here. He's just sat down on a flight case and he sat next to his wife and she's their girlfriend. And Bruce looks over to him and I'm kind of trying to back off now. I don't want to be seen, you know. Bruce looks over to him, winks at him, and then turns to Max on drums and just looks at him and goes, born in the USA. And then turns around and starts Born in the USA, which I don't know how the Americans will. For us Brits, it's a fucking huge song. It is a huge song. And he doesn't play it that often. And I'd done a few shows with him and I'd only ever seen him done it once in a few years. And I was like, fucking I love this song. And it was amazing, you know, straight into it. McCartney's, I think his current wife was American. She jumped up and put her arm around me and went, fucking hell, Born in the USA. And I'm like, yeah, cool. And so this mixed rush of emotion of, this is so cool. Born in the USA, Hyde Park, 80,000. I'm thinking, oh, fuck, this is a 10-minute song. He's not going to drop the last 3 songs because he always plays the last 3, which are all 6-minute songs. Plus this one that wasn't on the set list, hadn't seen it, hadn't played it in the last 5 shows, 6 shows.
So you're 20 minutes over now.
And now I'm thinking, oh, fuck. You know, mixed emotion of I'm a music fan. One of my favourite songs. It's huge. You don't get to see him play it. The last time I saw him play it was at the Olympic Stadium in Berlin and had the same experience, you know, fucking crowd. It was amazing. So I'm gone, shit. I'm thinking, okay, well, let's just see how this ends up. Maybe it'll be okay. Maybe it'll be okay. I saw George Travis. I went, hey, George, you know, it's 10:30. He's like, yeah, we got it. It's cool, you know. And so everybody's cool. And if you've ever done anything with the Springsteen gang, and they are so professional, they're on it. They know everything about that world. And they're just one of the best people I've ever dealt with on anything. They just get it. And they also get that it was a festival. The festival was called Hard Rock Calling. Bruce was playing a festival. It wasn't his show. Technically, it was a festival show. So they say to me, when we do our thing, we do whatever we want to do, but we are respectful when we do someone else's thing. That's why we don't do many festivals, because we're respectful of it. But when we do our show, we'll play till the sun goes down and it comes back up again, and we'll figure it out because we're Bruce Springsteen. And I was like, okay, cool. And so I'm thinking, shit, what's going to happen now? And with that, Bruce finishes Born in the USA, and we've got probably, 10 minutes till curfew. I'm thinking 2 songs, 3 songs, it might be close. If it's 10:33, 10:34, I'll get in trouble, but
just a wagging of the finger kind of trouble, not real trouble.
Yeah, it will be a problem, but not a big one. You have to remember, when you have 80,000 people in Hyde Park, they shut Park Lane, which is the only way to go north to south in the centre of London. No buses, nothing. It's shut completely. So we shut Park Lane around 10:15, and then nothing comes up and down Park Lane at 10:15. It's now 10:20. My phone rings. My boss is stood in the middle of Park Lane with the chief of police. Toby, there doesn't seem to be any people out here. What's happening? Normally people leave 10 minutes early, 15 minutes early, but Bruce is doing Born in the USA and no one's leaving the show ever. And I'm like, yeah, he's kind of finishing up, but we might have a problem. And he's like, no, we've got a problem. We've shut Park Lane. I'm here with the chief of police and there's police motorbikes. It's shut. No, you've got to get off stage. So I sort of see George and say, how's it going? And I phoned our ops team. We'd asked the local authority, hey, can we get an extension of the license? And there was just a local authority guy in the back of them just shook his head and went, no. And so we looked at the police and went, hey, can we get a bit of an extension? And they went, it's not our call. So, and it was no one's call. And that was the whole thing. And so we're thinking, shit. And with that, McCartney walks on stage.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. And the crowd go lunatic crazy. And Bruce just goes, hey, let's play some songs. Let's start with I Saw Her Standing There. So Bruce has done the Dance in the Dark. Dance in the Dark is kind of where Bruce finishes. So now McCartney's on stage. I Saw Her Standing There. So now I'm sitting there going, fuck, it's now 10:30 and we haven't finished. And he's doing I Saw Her Standing There, which is just a great moment. McCartney's playing guitar, not bass, which is kind of interesting. And then with that, my boss called me again and said, look, Toby, this is a real problem now. It's 10:34, 35, and it takes 20 minutes just to clear the site, half an hour. So we're, it's going to be 11:30 before we even open up the road. And the road's been shut now since 9:40 or 10:15. So it's going to be an hour and 15 minutes. No one can travel in London on a Saturday night. Just chaos. I was like, oh, shit. And so I sort of said to George Travis, I said, this is a bit of a problem. George's like, well, it's your show. Do what you got to do. But that's Paul McCartney and that's Bruce Springsteen singing I Saw Her Standing There. It's saying we're respectful. It's your show. It's not ours. But this is pretty cool. And I was like, oh, fuck, So my boss is just calling me constantly. I've got the stage manager and the production manager on the stage as well. And I'm thinking, oh, shit. And so as he finishes, I Saw Her Standing There. Bruce looks at McCartney and goes, should we do some more? And I'm like, oh, no, but Bruce has been finishing on Twist and Shout, which is a Lennon song, I believe. And correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure I am. And McCartney doesn't do Twist and Shout ever because he doesn't do that many Lennon songs. And so they start Twist and Shout. And with that, we've had to make a call and said, look, we've got delay towers through the whole site. Let's just start turning down the back delay towers. We'll keep everything on stage on so people can hear it, but we'll turn down the delay towers so people at the back of the room going, oh, hold on a second, my last tube's at 11 o'clock. It's now 10:40. We better go anyway and get our last tube. And, so I'm thinking, okay, so we're starting winding it down. And unfortunately, the sound guy got a bit overzealous and we turned it down a bit too much. And so the last sort of 20 seconds of Twist and Shout was pretty quiet. And then Bruce looks at McCartney and they hug and they'll walk off stage and they're walking off. And Bruce is sort of looking around going, is there one more song here? Is there one more song here? And I'm just dying now going, I'm in so much trouble. It's just a death for me. Also, I'm a huge Springsteen fan. So one more song for me is kind of like,
So part of you is like, yeah, there's another song.
Oh yeah. And part of me is like, I'm going to get fired. Yeah. And so he looks at his guitar tech. Bruce's guitar tech's the best in the world. Knows exactly what he needs, whether it's an acoustic or electric or whatever cramp or whatever he needs. Just to watch his guitar tech work one night is just a feat in itself. And he grabbed this acoustic. And I sort of went to almost put my hand on his shoulder and go, you can't play anymore. And just as I took one step towards him, I went, Toby, it's fucking Bruce Springsteen. What are you doing, you idiot? And so I'm so glad I didn't. It was like my sort of promoter instinct was, hey, the show's over. My fan instinct was, this is the fucking best guy in the world. I'm not doing this, So I stood there and his guitar tech went, hey, Bruce, here's your guitar. But it's done. We're turned off. My sound guys at the mixing desk are telling me we're off. And Bruce kind of goes, shrugs his shoulders, cool, looks at the crowd and goes, hey guys, in the waves, and kind of goes, we're off, and walks off stage. And I'm with Landau and I'm with George Travis, and they do a runner after every show. So there's 10 cars outside, they're ready to go. And my boss has called me and said, look, we're now packed. There's 80,000 people in the park. no one can leave the site backstage. And so I've had to go to George and said, look, George, normally you come off at 10:25 in Hyde Park, you get in a car, go. By the time people figure out what's going on, it's fine. But people are now rushing for their last tube, 11 o'clock. They've got to get going. So it's chaos out there. We can't let cars leave the site because you've got to drive through 80,000 people. And this is how cool they are. George's like, okay, cool. I'll tell the guys. And just knocks on every car door and says, hey guys, we got to hang out here for a while. By the way, Bruce's guys have cleared out all of their dressing rooms. There's nothing there anymore because they're going to the next show. And so we're there. We kind of got out casually and just kind of strolled around. They're buzzing. McCartney's hanging out. They're all hanging out. Everybody's buzzing after a great show. Bit of a laugh and a bit of funny, and it was great and it was a good night, and didn't really think anything of it. And bizarrely, up until that point, you know, Bruce is a huge stadium act across the whole of Europe. Stadiums in every single market. Bruce, I would say, is bigger in Europe than he is in America. He is a solid stadium stroke multiple stadium act, I think, in every city in Europe. He is huge in Europe. But bizarrely, in the UK, he'd never got big press. Always 5-star reviews. Great. And he doesn't do a lot of press, always 5-star reviews, but you'd never see like a huge picture, or there was never a kind of real, wow, Bruce is coming to town moment. It was always just, everybody knew who he was. It just never got the press that other artists sometimes would get. And so that night we were like, oh fuck, I got beaten up. I got bollocked for a while. We had a debrief in a room.
How late after the show came down were you?
I think 15 minutes. Which is a long time when you've got the whole of London shut down. And so we're kind of sitting there, and the Hard Rock and my sponsor said, we need to put out a press release. I'm like, no, nothing really happened. No one knows what time the curfew is here. It's like, it's totally fine. It's cool. Bruce's camp seemed cool with it. I've checked, you know, they were cool. They got to do their thing. McCartney had a great time. Everybody's cool. It was what a great night. Fantastic. We went out, we partied afterwards. Bruce likes to stay in a certain hotel, and we went back to the hotel and drank till late, and it was fun. And so I got up in the morning, checked my phone, and it's front page news, and it's gone around the world. Bruce Springsteen's turn off in Hyde Park. The mayor of London at the time, Boris Johnson, puts out a quote, I would have let him play all night, although he has no jurisdiction over the park. And it's gone global, and we're getting calls from America, and I'm getting like, fuck, where did this was just a gig in London, you know? And it got massive, massive press, and we're like, shit. Full-page reviews of the show and this, and people turned to, how dare you turn off Bruce Springsteen? You turn off Bruce Springsteen. And it was only, again, it was the last minute and a half of the last song was turned off, you know, but it was, you know, a minute. I think, and this is pretty cool, I had Paul Simon playing the next night doing Graceland from start to finish, which was quite a cool way to finish the weekend. And so that's cool. Bruce leaves, and then a day later, they're playing Ireland, and Bruce comes on stage, crowd are going crazy, looks at the band and goes halfway through a note, starts Twist and Shout. Plays the last verse and chorus, picks up the mic and says, just wanted to finish the show from the other night. Now we can start this show. And starts the whole concert for Thunder Road. And that was their turning off in Hyde Park story.
That's awesome. Thanks, Toby.
You're welcome.
I mean, that story had Paul McCartney, it had Bruce Springsteen, it had the Queen herself. That one's going to be really hard to top.
I think challenge accepted, because I know what next week's war story is, and it has to do with a man becoming a boy. It's going to be a tearjerker.
Yo, this is Tommy Lee. Yeah, that T Lee. And you're listening to Promoter 101. Fucking turn this shit up, bitches.
We're joined next by Live Nation's Harvey Cohen. He sits down with Dan to open up about his roots as one of Canada's largest independent concert promoters before rolling up into Live Nation.
We've got one of the Canadian legends in the house. Harvey Cohen, welcome to Promoter 101.
Hello, Daniel. How are you?
Union was one of the biggest independent promoters in not just Canada, but in the world. You guys were a power player.
Yeah, it was 15 years of grinding and slogging and really slow and steady growth over the years.
Festivals, arenas, EDM, punk rock, the clubs, markets all over the place, a ton of staff. You guys really had a serious machine. You guys weren't just like a kid doing shows from his parents' bedroom.
Well, that was pretty much how we started out, but we did slowly grow from a single office into 2 and eventually into 4 across the country.
And Union, really, at the essence of it, was you and your partner, Nayland.
Absolutely. Nayland McMillan and I founded the company in 2000, and to this day, we're still partners in crime.
Looking at the success of your company, you guys were in so many different lanes. Did you just get to the point where you needed the resources that Live Nation had, or was there a law in Canada that you get so big that you have to join the rest of that Canadian mafia?
We got to the point where we had a decision to make. We had essentially outgrown what we could do on our own. We were always entirely self-financed. We hadn't ever brought in outside money. And, we always had a desire to grow and grow and grow. And we had a few setbacks that year that really put us in that mindset of we are probably playing bigger than we should be without some deeper resources, both financially and in terms of the administration end of the company.
Things develop quickly. And you need guys that can play very deep on the bench, that really understand how to transform a park into a festival site or transform a stadium into a concert, and not just throw up a stage, but know how to protect the field so you don't get charged thousands of dollars to fix it quickly. You need those resources, and that's something that you can't build over time. You have to quickly have that when your bands are ready to go to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we had really fallen into a space of festivals. We were up to 10 or 12 festivals across the country in the latter years. And ultimately, we were just absolutely tapped for resources. We were burning our staff out. It was just time to dig a little bit deeper, which we just couldn't do on our own.
Now, you guys have always been well liked, particularly in the Canadian market. You guys know all of those players. So that was an easy transition because some of the guys that worked for them had come from your office originally.
For a very big country, it's a very small community. And it's true. We had some staff that had moved over to Live Nation over the years. And I've known the senior guys that I work with now for, since the beginning of my career 20 years ago. Paul Hagenson, who's the president of Live Nation for Canada, gave me my first street marketing gig in the mid-90s when Bauhaus was playing the Commodore in Vancouver. I think he gave me a $100 gig when I was still in college. Now we're both at Live Nation.
You've worked with all of these people, and you can pick up the phone and ask for advice from Riley O'Connor. The amazing coolness of that. These are resources that your company just has these part of the team. You can get that advice at any moment you need it.
Oh, absolutely. It's such a collaborative company. It actually surprised me how collaborative it is considering how big the company is. Nobody makes any, massive decisions just kind of fly by night on their own. It's there's always discussion, and it's a very team-oriented environment.
So you work for Michael Rapino, who is clearly Canadian. The ethos of the company is run by a lot of very big players that are all Canadian based. What is it about your country and your love for music that has established yourselves as the world's leader in concert promotion at this point?
That's a good question.
Am I limited because I'm American? Do I cap out?
Oh, absolutely, without a doubt. There's a couple tiers of that ladder that it'll just be
never
break through until you change that passport. It's true, though, even from the Michael Cole days onward, Canadians have seemed to be rising to the top of their game, taking some big chances. Like we said, Michael Cole took some massive chances back in the day that escalated him to superstardom in the promoter world. To Michael Rapino, obviously, has transformed a company that just has blown, I would say, almost everybody away in terms of the scope of it and obviously the value that's going back to the investors at this point by the looks of it.
How much do you wind up interacting with him on projects? I mean, obviously you've got Paul, who is your go-to because he's the president of Canada.
Generally, Canada works in its own division, and we have North American calls, etc. But generally, Canada operates as a independent island of its own, a very successful one at that.
Both Ticketmaster and Live Nation are looked at differently than Ticketmaster was back when Pearl Jam was suing them. It's definitely a friendlier, more liked brand all the way around from both the inside of the industry and the outside.
Yeah, coming from the outside of the company for a very long time, being the enemy of the state, at the end of the day, it is very true. The company seems to have transformed itself both internally and how it's viewed externally for sure. It's, the artists come first, the fans come first. If you make both of those people happy, you're going to be really successful at what you do.
You had to learn to buy in somebody else's software system. You guys obviously had your own system, so that's different accounting processes. Forecasting was probably something you guys didn't do at Union.
Correct. The booking process was a massive change for sure. I was used to banging off offers in my Excel spreadsheet and converting it off to a PDF and firing it out versus, this internal system that obviously has so many different levels of administration behind it that, that data needs to get pulled in a million different directions to 20 different offices to 50 different departments, whatever it is. So it was definitely a transition on that front because it takes quite a bit longer. And we're actually just going through the process of a brand new booking system that was rolled out in the last couple of weeks. It's an amazing system, but obviously such a massive integration has certainly not been without its challenges. And we're all working through it though. But, once it's done, it's going to be a game changer.
So AEG doesn't really have a local office in Canada.
Correct. Most of their business comes out of their touring offices.
And then you got Elliot Lefko popping in doing some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, I was just going to say, actually, Elliot, back in Union days, Elliot was our AEG partner and we did a lot of business together, and he still likes to poke his head up here and there, and he does some great shows. And yeah, AEG as a whole doesn't have a massive presence in Canada, but, under both their touring office and under Elliot's work, they're certainly there.
Is there a competitor now then, or are you guys a monopoly in Canada?
There's always competitors. It's funny enough, there's the guys that were kind of on our tails who have stepped up a level. And so at the end of the day, whether it's AEG or whether it's independents that were just like us, it's there's always somebody out there biting at our feet.
Looking back at selling your company, that had to be really challenging for the first year, and I imagine maybe a little bit longer even for Nayland, because he's very punk rock.
You know what? I don't know if I'd necessarily say that.
You don't think Nayland's very punk rock?
Oh, Nayland is very punk rock.
Because he would say fuck you for that.
No, he's definitely very punk rock. But at the end of the day, you know, we both grew with the company as it went. And when it was time to make the move over to Live Nation, I think we looked at some things differently. But at the end of the day, we knew it was the right move for both of us, professionally and personally. You know, we're both enjoying it. Like you said, it certainly hasn't been without challenges as we went. Frankly, I'd never had what I refer to as a job per se in my life. You know, when I was young, I just always kind of hustled and did different things, bought and sold cars, you know, bit of this, bit of that. But I never actually generally worked for somebody else. And then we started the company straight out of university because I didn't want a job with anybody else. So I always wanted to just work for myself. So there was certainly that transition, but at the end of the day, when you work with good people, you know, I still thank God every day that I can get up and go to a job that I love, and I don't have to look at a clock and wonder when it's time to go home at the end of the day ever.
They've added resources. Life has become easier, I imagine, on some levels. You get to knock off at some point. The company's got it from here kind of thing. There's staff for that. There's infrastructure.
Yeah, you know, especially on the administration and in the finance side of it, it's very, very deep in that area. So we can focus more on putting together shows and booking festivals, et cetera, and taking our ideas from concept to reality, as opposed to worrying about some accounting statements that have to get out.
The moment of actually thinking about it, was there an ethos in your head of, I'm going to work for a corporation now? I never wanted a job. Was that a problem for you and a barrier for you?
I wouldn't say it was a barrier, because I think over the last few years, as we kept growing and growing and growing and experienced the challenges that came with that, I think I came to the realization that it was going to be more of a benefit than it would be a detriment, because at the end of the day, the resources we needed just weren't possible. You know, we had talked to a couple other different interested parties, whether it was some outside money that would come in and we would just continue to exist on our own, to some other established promoters. And, you know, I sat and weighed all the pros and cons of each, and ultimately bringing in some money or establishing a partnership with an existing promoter that didn't have infrastructure in Canada didn't really serve our needs in any real way, other than potentially giving us a deeper bankroll to play around with. So it was an interesting thought process, but it became pretty easy once, you know, we laid all the cards on the table and decided who we should be working with.
Now that you're buying the bigger shows, some of that stuff just comes through the system, and you're dealing with those arena shows and theater shows or whatever. I mean, anything that plays Calgary where you're at, like, you're the biggest guy in the market, right? For Live Nation. If anything big is there, you're the guy that has to handle it.
So Ian is the president of the Central Region, where he had a one-man shop in Calgary prior to our acquisition. So with that came our existing staff, and then we've added some people, and then we obviously added the Edmonton office, which Nayland was overseeing. So it's been a pretty big expansion. The company went from, you know, Vancouver being the only Western office to having Calgary and Edmonton in the mix.
That is just an insane lifestyle change, but it seems like now that you've had 2 years to filter in and the process has happened and life is normal.
Oh, definitely. You know, we're into the groove at this point, and whether it's booking local shows across Western Canada, to booking our festivals, to dealing with the touring business that comes out of Los Angeles, it's a pretty well-oiled machine at this point.
Man, thank you so much for taking time and just hanging out with me on Promoter 101.
Awesome. I appreciate it, Dan.
Harvey is one of my oldest and dearest friends, and I say we all just give a bye on selling out. I mean, what the hell? He's a great guy, and he deserves the money. Give it up for him.
Hi, it's Marcy Allen, president of Mac Presents, and honored to be on Promoter 101.
Celebrating birthdays the week of March 23rd to 29th, 2018, in the year of our Lord.
On Friday the 23rd, wishing happy birthday to CA's, Christine Marshall, and SMA's, Kimberly Galchuk.
K. Marsh. Saturday, Emily Hazlitt, Amanda Gregoire, and Maya Sharp.
On Sunday, wishing a happy birthday to Paradigm's Ashley Harris, Tom Giles, Doug Stanhope, Scott Galloway, Michael Riley, and Haley Anderson.
Monday, Nederlanders Justin Kajau and Neil Benson.
On Tuesday, wishing a happy birthday to Pittsburgh's own Gary Hinston, Matthew Thomas, Trevor Whitten, and Paradigm's Fred Bolander.
Wednesday, Anthony Rhodes and STG's Mason Sherry, as well as Ringo Starr's own Dave Hart.
On Thursday the 29th, we'll give a happy birthday to JS Touring's Kevin Doctorman, Straight No Chasers' David Roberts, Laura Gladstone, ICM's Mitch Blackman, Alive Enterprises' Toby Mamus, Bacana Vago, Jamie Willis, and John Popper. That's a day full of birthdays right there, Dan.
Yeah, so John Popper, obviously Blues Traveler, but JS Touring, Kevin Doctorman, do you know what JS Touring stands for?
No.
Jerry Seinfeld Touring. He works for one client. That's pretty amazing. But he came from Contemporary and worked with everyone and kind of ran the world for a minute. But him working with Seinfeld and producing his tours worldwide it's a very cool gig he wound up having.
Very cool indeed.
Hey, happy birthday to everyone from the gang at Promoter 101.
Winkle J. Moose on Promoter 101.
Now here's something you'll really like.
That'll do it for episode 75 of Promoter 101. If you want to reach out to us, send us an email to steiny@promoter101.net.
The quote of the week comes from Leonard Bernstein. To achieve great things, two things are needed: a plan and not quite enough time. Luke, I think you might be familiar with this.
Indeed, Dan. And we're going to be back next week. Same pod time, same pod place. We're going to be joined by Red Lights' Mary Hilliard Harrington, talking about her early days working for Trump and her current gig, managing Dierks Bentley, along with WME UK's Alex Bewley, talking about exploring the market of digital media. Survival reality star Johnny Fairplay drops in on us, and Emporium's own Jason Zink and Live Nation's Zed Bull recount war stories, including Jason's about becoming a man. This is going to be a very interesting one, Dan.
It has to do with the bar mitzvah, and it's really a special story, and it hits close to home. Hey, before we leave you, I want to take a moment to thank everyone that's been so supportive with dropping notes and reviews and talking up the podcast and sharing it with friends and giving us all the feedback. Incredibly supportive to both me and Luke, and really want to thank everyone for participating and sharing and just being so supportive all the way around. It means the world to us. It really does.
Seriously, it does mean the world. The little notes of people tuning in or coming up to us at panels today. I was actually speaking to some students at Belmont University this morning, and I had a few people come up to me afterwards. It means a lot to us. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. Thanks for the feedback. We hope that we're doing right by all of you out there, and we hope to keep doing this for a while.
Thanks so much for all of your support. Lots of great stories out there. So until next time, we're wishing you sold-out shows for the weeks to come. Cheers.
Hi, my name's Jay Williams from WME, and you're listening to Promoter 101.